Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. It's a pleasure to see all of you and to be together tonight for our weekly program in which we follow the system which has been passed down to us through a chain of teachers since Lord Krishna gave instructions about how to perform devotional service. And I offer first my gratitude to our founder and Acharya, which means one who teaches by example, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who's seated on this seat of esteem called the Vaiśeṣika. As many of you know, Vyasadeva, it's actually a generic title. It means the one who edits. Our Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, recent empowered incarnation of Krishna, who compiled the ancient teachings, which come from a time immemorial. In fact, they're co-eternal with Krishna. They've always existed. They're manifest at some times and other times not as available in human society. And his main purpose is to fulfill the purpose of the universe. And the reason it's created is to give an opportunity for souls of the world, also called Atma, individual units of consciousness, to be very technical, or parts of the Supreme Whole, Krishna. And by coming in contact with Shastra, the Vedanta Sutra, which is a compilation of and summary of the knowledge of the Upanishads, says Shastra Yoni Dvat. It is from hearing from these wisdom texts that one can become uncovered. And the teachings of Bhakti Yoga are found very prominently, especially in the explanation of the Vedanta Sutra in a book called Srimad Bhagavatam. And if we look to the 11th canto out of 12 cantos, we find that Krishna himself gives an explanation to one of his devotees, Uddhava, about how to perform devotional service. There are 9 processes that begin with hearing. Everyone's hearing something. It's natural to want to hear something of the world. But there's a way in which we can hear something from beyond this world as well. And that's one of the themes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo, which literally means that the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam are from beyond the mundane creation, the phenomenal world. And there, in Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna distinguishing between the world we're in now and a world that is avyakta, or beyond our sense perception. He says, Paras tasmat tu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yaksak sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu navinashati. This world is sometimes manifest and other times not manifest. But the spiritual world, he said, is permanent, eternal, same thing. And it's self-effulgent. It's not subject to the frailties of this material world or the changeability of this world. So Srila Prabhupada came and taught the same message that is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita about how one can practically apply the principles of Bhakti Yoga in one's own life. And you can do it here in Silicon Valley or anywhere else. If you live in a house, you can do it. If you live in a car, you can still do it. I know people live in cars and they still somehow or other were able to perform devotional service. You can do it if you're in prison. I know people who live in prison. That's their permanent. I know somebody whose permanent home is in prison. And that person performs devotional service. I know people who live on farms and they can do it. Where else can you live? Where? You can live in a van. No, you can't do it in a van. No, you can. It's okay. No vans. That's the only thing. You can't do it in a van. And to this end, there's a poem by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he says, Grihe tako bane tako shada hari boli dako, which means that it doesn't matter where you live. It's not based on the external environment, but it's only based on our adherence to the system which has been passed down from Krishna. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, Satatam kirtayanto mam. That satata means continuously, and kirtayanto means to sing about, to speak about Krishna. And if you are able to develop a daily practice of hearing about Krishna from the literatures that describe the spiritual world and also give description of Krishna, who's the origin of both the spiritual and the material worlds, which is not a disappointment. All of the intrigue that we find interesting in cinema people like to listen to, watch. Which genre do people like? Let's name a few genres. Action. Comedy. Then there's dramedy. I know. And there, horror. Science fiction. Crime. Romance. These all come fully available in the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are horrific stories. Shamantaka Jewel. It's the way in which Satyajit has his head cut off or murdered in his own house, and then he's preserved in a vat of oil so that later on Krishna could see how he was killed. Is that horrifying? Say yes. And there's romance. We find in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I won't go into a lot of detail, but there's stories of Krishna and his girlfriends meeting in the forest and dancing. They're very romantic, and there's complete with humorous banter between the two. Action. We turn to the story of Varahadev fighting with Hiranyaka, which literally means golden eye. That sounds like somebody stole that title and used it in some other movie. Golden eye. Hiranyaka means one with a golden eye. And there's some action in that, isn't it? Or how about the story of Shalva? Shalva had what's the most popular car now? Tesla. He had a Tesla airplane. It was very high tech. It was created by Elon Musk type of person. And he was using it to harass people on the ground, especially Krishna and the residents of Dwarka. And there's a fight. We can go through any of the genres and we'll find that they're there available in the Vedic stories, especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But they relate to Krishna's activities, and therefore, as is mentioned by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, keep doing what you're doing, but just make sure it's in connection with me. And then it becomes perfect. So devotional service is something that can be practiced anywhere, and which doesn't disappoint because it fulfills all the desires for drama, for activity. And then there's remembering. And this is one of the important points given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a natural way which we may notice in our lives that whatever kinds of things we're used to hearing and whatever kind of activities we're used to doing result in us remembering them later. That is, remembering what we heard and remembering what we've done. And this is consequential because the way that our future is formed is by our own proclivities and our own consciousness. And we're driven in a certain way because of the desires we have in our heart. We're compelled to move in the world. Therefore, Krishna says, if you're able to remember me by hearing about me and by recounting what you've heard and speaking it to your family or to your friends or to other people, then you'll remember me. And because of remembering Krishna, then there's a way in which Krishna says you'll naturally become happy and well situated. That's the secret to life. Krishna says in the Gita, Ananya Cheta Satatam Yomam Smarati Nityasaha Tasyaham Sulabha Partha Nitya Yuktasya Yogina. That if you try an experiment, and that is to just think of Krishna. Ananya Cheta. Cheta means your consciousness. And what you're preoccupied with is something that is processed through your Cheta, or your mind and intelligence. If you find your mind and intelligence working on various problems and thinking of future scenarios and remembering the past, you'll notice that it's all within the realm of things that you've done, either in this life or in a past life. And so Krishna recommends Ananya Cheta Satatam, Yo Mam Smarati Nityasaha, which means try this, exclusively think of Krishna in the ways that I've mentioned before. It's a practical activity, not impractical. You can make it impractical. For instance, in the ashram where I lived in San Francisco on Valencia Street, circa 1973, I have a remembrance of a person who misinterpreted Krishna's idea to always think of me to mean that he always had to be looking at a picture of Krishna throughout the day. And anybody here familiar with the instrument called the harmonica? Have you ever seen a harmonica holder? It goes over your neck like this, and then it juts out. There's a hinge, and it will stay in front of your face, so that way you can play the guitar and play the harmonica at the same time. That's why it was invented. Or piano. Something you're doing with your hands. So he had invented a way to always think of Krishna, which was using a harmonica holder. He had placed a picture of Krishna. And so it was in front of him all the time. And that meant that it was difficult for him to do many other practical things because the picture was right in front of his face. I was a new person at the time, new in the society, so I didn't have any free advice for him. I did find it to be quite inventive. Others had told him that this wasn't part of the practice of Krishna consciousness, to block out anything else and just have a picture of Krishna in front of your face all the time. It turned out that it didn't work well for him, and I just remember that he had gradually drifted away because that was impractical. But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mama nusmara yujyacha mayarpita manobhutir mami vaishyasya samshaya. It means Therefore, because you have to think of me, and because you also have to do your work in the world, then try to combine the two together. And while you're working, while you're doing anything else, then remember me at the same time. Last night, we were at an event which took place on the dark side of the moon. And we made a moon excursion to go there. And when we came out of the joyous event that we had joined, we saw that there was a painted sky. And we were taken aback by the beauty of it and began to think of how in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna describes how the universe is his body. And there are various features of the world that we can look at and remember him. Let's see if we can recall a few of them. I would like to volunteer one to start. May I? Yes. He says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the birds of the world are his artistic sense. Okay, I did one. Now you try. Yes? The rivers are his veins. Are you thinking of a song when you're saying that? There was a song written by one of our godbrothers that includes it. The trees are hair on his body. Yes, another one. She took yours? Oh, that's all right. Okay, go ahead. Both of you were going to say that. Mountains are the stacks of bones. Yeah? Beauty of nature is a smile. Yes?
The sun and moon are his eyes.
Sun and moon are his eyes. You need to score some points over here. There's a way in which one might look at the universe and note these things and then think of Krishna. And that means that even if you're walking about the world, you don't need to have a harmonica holder in front of your face with a picture. You can look out at the painted sky and think, Krishna's the greatest artist who has painted this. Once in Hawaii, which is known to be a heavenly place, I think of it otherwise, having been there quite a few times, and once having a slight health problem there and having to stay for 3 months. Nonetheless, it is a heavenly-like place. And there in Hawaii, there's an ocean beach, well-known beaches. And when some of the devotees asked Prabhupada if they could go to the beach, Prabhupada said, okay. And then when they came back to Prabhupada with a worry, which was, isn't this Maya, us going to the beach? Prabhupada said, Krishna says, of bodies of water I'm the ocean. Of lights I'm the radiant sun. How could you possibly forget Krishna at the beach? And once in San Francisco, Prabhupada, upon approaching the ocean, Pacific Ocean, he looked out at the grandeur of the ocean and said, all glories to the Pacific Ocean, and appreciated it. There's practical ways. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yet karoshi, yet ashnasi, yet juhosi, dadasi, yet tapasyasi, konteya, tat kurushva manarpanam. He's saying in this practical piece of advice that whatever you're doing now, you can keep doing it, only connect it with Krishna. So if you're eating, which is, there's a high percentage chance that you eat, right? Yeah. And therefore, one of the ways in bhakti yoga that one can think of Krishna is while eating. And the method is a slight change in the way that we eat. We think of whatever we're cooking as an offering for Krishna. This serves several purposes. One is, if we're cooking for Krishna, we would remember that he has senses. And Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya priyachati taraham bhakti paritam ashnami paritatmana, which means that if you offer me something, a leaf or flower, fruit or water, and you do it with devotion, then I'll eat it. So if Krishna says he'll eat it, it means he has senses. But when you're cooking, if you're thinking that I'm going to offer this to Krishna, then you'll remember that he's a personality. That's unusual for people to remember, because oftentimes people don't know that God has a personality, and then even if they do, if they accept that he has a personality, they're not sure what he looks like, and they're not even sure if they could offer him something to eat, because they might think, well, why would God need to eat? Well, that's true. He doesn't need to eat. However, he doesn't eat like an ordinary person, in the sense that what he says when he asks us to offer food to him is that I eat the love that you give. In fact, he's so grateful for a small offering given in love that I just heard recently, it was on the 24-hour news cycle that came out, that there was a devotee named Sudama, and he went to see Krishna in Dwarka, and he clandestinely brought Krishna an offering, and it was some old dried up rice. It was rice that hadn't been cooked, and it was not very high quality rice. It was all he could afford. In fact, he couldn't afford it. He begged it from a neighbor. In fact, he didn't even beg it from a neighbor. His wife did, and gave it to Sudama, who wrapped it in his cloth. And then he went to see Krishna, and Krishna said, "Did you bring me something?" After they had enjoyed each other's company for a couple of days. And Sudama didn't reply because he thought, I'm embarrassed to offer Krishna this rice. But Krishna said, I know you have it, and therefore I think you should give it to me. And when Sudama, being too embarrassed to offer it to him, Krishna then asserted himself and grabbed the rice from him, took it from his cloth, physically. And then he ate a palmful of that rice. And he was about to take a second palmful of rice, but Rukmini, who's his eternal consort and also the goddess of fortune, stopped him and said, please don't take another. Because she said, I'm so obligated to this poor Brahmin now, that if you take another, I don't know how I would be able to garner enough riches to repay him. And she also felt that she wanted some of those rice grains as well, so she didn't want Krishna to finish them. It's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, after Krishna, if you know the story, spoiler alert, Sudama, who was very poor then, became opulent and rich. He wasn't interested in that at all. In fact, he didn't even ask Krishna for it. It happened automatically. And truth be told, Krishna thought that Sudama was too attached to being renounced. That's why he gave him so much wealth, to show him that he could be renounced even when he had great wealth. But the point I'm coming to is this. Krishna mentions that he was so obliged to Sudama for his very sincere offering of rice. Even though he didn't offer it, he felt embarrassed to offer it, but still it was such a loving exchange that he had brought something and then it was for Krishna. That Krishna said, I could never repay you for this. When I was reading that, I was thinking how Krishna is unlimitedly grateful. And even the smallest offering that we make to him is one that he wants to repay. What's more, when we offer a little prayer to Krishna that I would like to take shelter of you and surrender to you, then Krishna never forgets that either. So going back to the process of bhakti, if you cook something for Krishna, even if it's very simple, you may live, oh, we forgot one. You might live in a dorm. Can you practice Hare Krishna devotional service in a dorm? And do you have to eat when you're in a dorm? Can you cook something in the dorm? Sometimes? Yeah, sometimes you can. It's not so easy. Sometimes you have to make do in life, figure out. But if you make a simple offering to Krishna before you eat, which requires a little forethought, that when you're cooking, you think, I'm not just cooking this because I'm hungry and I have to eat, but I'm cooking it for Krishna. That's the crossover point when your eating becomes devotional service. So you think, I'm cooking for Krishna, even if it's simple. And then you could offer it to Krishna before you eat it. And how could you do that? You could say, my dear Lord Krishna, please accept this offering. And if you had a picture, you could offer it to Krishna too. So this is one of the ways Krishna says, you live your normal life, but before you eat, just make it as an offering to me. Then you'll feel satisfied and connected, and Krishna will accept your offering. And he also says, Yat tapasyasi konteya, if you do any austerities. Does anybody here do any austerities? You know what austerities are? Like you do something you don't want to do for the sake of a higher cause? Well, it's fasting is also working too, right? That's an austerity. We do a lot of austerities anyway. So if you can find ways to offer the pains that you take just to stay alive to Krishna, for instance, working is a great austerity. If you set aside some of the fruit of your labor, means cold hard cash, from what you get, and you say, I'm going to give a portion to Krishna, then when you're working, you'll think, oh, I'm also working for Krishna. And in going through this process of working for Krishna, eating for Krishna, and so forth, then you remember Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Man mana bhava mad bhakto. Let's try to think of me. Let's see if we just increase the oxygen. Can we get a little cross ventilation from that side too, please? So the system is not complex. It's very simple. And our founder Acharya taught this simple system as it was presented by Krishna thousands of years ago. And he also gave us volumes of books, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, that describe the beauty of the spiritual world, especially the way people talk to one another. Much of it is in song and prayer, and even in their talks. They're very heartwarming talks we find throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, there's also, as I mentioned before, drama and violence and horror to satisfy all the tastes that we have for interaction in this world. But it's all in relationship to Krishna. So no one has to change being naturally inclined, the natural inclination we have for doing anything, except for just transferring our awareness that we're doing it instead of for ourselves, for Krishna. Then it becomes a mode of purification, and this is called chikitsitam. Chikitsitam means remedial measure or medicine. And when you're able to transfer everything over to Krishna that you do in your life, then life becomes productive and joyful. So that's a system of devotional service. I highly recommend a practice that includes chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, which is a prayer to Krishna, "O my Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service." And if you take time out from trying to engineer your life, does anybody make plans to make your life better every day? Do they work out 100%, 90%, 80%, 70%, 60%? Tell me when I'm getting close. 50%, 40%, 30%, 20%, 10%, 9%, 8, 7, Krishna 6, Krishna 5, Krishna 4, Krishna 0.5, Krishna 0.005. I'm getting closer now to how much it works out in making plans, although I do think it is a good idea to make well-reasoned plans to move forward. It's just that they don't always go the way we think they will because we're not the supreme controller. But there's a way in which when we chant Krishna's names, we also take the burden off of ourselves of thinking that it's all my arrangement, the way my life's going to go. You do the best you can on that side, but when you chant Hare Krishna, it's a great relief because then you can say, "Krishna, I admit that I'm not the supreme controller." Would you like to try saying that? Yes. I'd like to unburden you. You can thank me later. Okay, dear Krishna, I admit that I'm not the supreme controller. And that you are. Therefore I surrender unto you. And that's the mood of chanting Hare Krishna. Take a burden off your head for a while. All the endeavors, what I think I have to become, the identity I think I have to maintain, that everybody thinks I'm like this, so I better keep it going. But if you're able to chant Hare Krishna sincerely and just say, "Krishna, you know who I am. I surrender unto you. I hand over all responsibility to you," which is what Krishna offers at the end of Bhagavad Gita when he says, "Sarva dharman parityaja." Like, that really means don't try to engineer everything yourself. He says, hand it over to me. I'll take care of all your affairs. Doesn't that sound good? And then he says at the end, don't worry. Don't you love that when you're in distress and somebody you trust says, don't worry? Yeah, it happened to me recently. I was really fretting over something. And it was bothering me a lot. And then I was telling one of my friends, he's like, this is happening. He goes, I know. I know the situation. He said, don't worry. I just took rest. And I slept like a little, I don't know, chipmunk or something. And he said, don't worry. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says all these intrigues in life, reversals of fortune, complexities that come in, he said, just take to this way of thinking that Krishna's supreme controller, I'm doing everything for him, whatever it may be, and let the result come from Krishna. I'll do the best I can. It's not that I'll be slovenly and not do what I can. But I do the best I can with what I have and leave the rest to Krishna, and then take Krishna's word for it, don't worry. Masuchaha. Now that makes for a practical life because you can't stop working, you can't stop eating, you can't stop doing some austerity. Everything you can do, everything you will do, but then just transfer it over to Krishna. And there's a little form you can fill out online where you got to get a spiritual attorney to sign it all over. It's kind of like a revocable living trust. You take everything out of your name, and then you just put it in the trust. If somebody comes and says, give me some money, and say, I don't have any. It's all in the trust. It doesn't belong to me anymore. And in the same way, The devotees put everything in their trust fund, and that's all Krishna's. It's not mine. Sorry, I don't have anything. This is called a kinchana. And it's also recommended for high-minded people in the world. Don't have anything. Rich people know that secret, right? That's why they don't pay any taxes. Because they just say it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to my corporation, and corporation has expenses and nothing left over for me. It's just whatever I need to live, but there's no extra to pay any extra percentage on. So in the same way with our lives, we can put everything in that trust. And if anybody wants the document, just open to Bhagavad Gita 1866 and say, I signed it all over. So this is something very practical that Prabhupada taught. And it's appealing at the same time because it's not just dry meditation, but it includes the beauty of music. Anybody like music? Only 3 or 4 people here today. Yeah, all right. And then we already mentioned food. You like to eat, right? And what else is there in life? There's friendship. Can you have friends? Oh, all right, friends. What else? What is the other good stuff in life? Anything else good that you like? Reading? Yeah, do you like to read? Just one person. All right, there's something for everybody. There's sports. Dancing. You like to dance? Art. You like art? Say yes. Just say yes to everything. Yeah, we like that because we want to see beauty, we want to enjoy, we want to have friendship, we want to love. That's what bhakti is. But it's the real form of it. Just imagine the kind of love that we want in this world, but it always slips out of our fingers or it changes into something else. And it seems so disappointing that there is a existential turning point in the life of a soul where the soul comes to a morbid conclusion that there is no love. And then such a person might come up with a nihilistic philosophy that I don't even exist, because love is so disappointing that I would rather not be an entity, a conscious soul, because there's a sense of love and I know it won't be fulfilled, so I give up. But you don't have to do that in devotional service because Krishna is love personified. And he can unlimitedly reciprocate our love. Anywhere. You can be on the top of a hill or on a boat and you can pray to Krishna and he's right there because he's in our hearts at every moment. He's waiting to reciprocate our love. So bhakti is quite natural and it's joy-inducing because we are naturally ready to enjoy it. It's just we're a little bit timid because we feel that the joy will come to a bad end. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but then it goes sour. But love for Krishna never goes sour. It just becomes increasingly more fulfilling and beautiful and compelling. And one can build a lifestyle around this, and it doesn't matter where you are. Food for thought. What do you think? Who said yes? Explain why you said. Who said? She said it? Explain why you said yes. What did you say yes to?
I liked how you said love for Krishna never goes sour and it becomes increasingly blissful. And I was thinking about a common theme, like when I see friends and we're in a public setting, we see a lot of people chewing gum. And after 5 minutes, they'll throw the gum. And I was thinking about it. They throw it because the taste is lost after 5 minutes. But Krishna's love never becomes sour and the taste keeps on increasing.
Yeah, nice analogy. We can relate to that. If you could invent a kind of gum where it just kept getting tastier. It starts by being okay, but then it just gets tastier and tastier as you chew it. That would be something like devotional service. Sometimes it's, yes, Hansapriya. We need a mic because this is filmed before a live studio audience.
Actually, your last statement brought me back to the story that you mentioned earlier about the Sudama Vipra story, that how the friendship in Krishna consciousness is it never goes sour, it's always blissful. And Krishna shows the example himself that, as a friend, Sudama, that even though over the years he probably didn't see him, but at the time, even though Sudama didn't express from his heart that what he wanted or why his wife had sent him, but how blissfully it turns out. It was a kind of win-win situation that even though he was a very renounced person, but the Krishna understood his need. And so I was just thinking it's a blissful because anything that we get to experience in this process is a blissful in the end. Thank you.
Oh yeah, very nice. Friendship, and also when you were making your second point, it reminded me of a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 9th chapter, and I can't remember which verse number it is. Maybe it's 37. Naisha paravara matir bhavato nanusya. Somebody find the verse because I want to look at the purport. Jantori yatatma surido jagadastatapi samseva ya asurataro evate prasada sevana rupa udayo naparavaratvam. And that means that Krishna is a desire tree. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. And imagine now you're seated below a kalpa vriksha, which means a tree that fulfills any desire that you have. Are you there? Yes. And now look inside and see what your desire is. Okay, open your eyes. I didn't want to give you too much time to think about it. Was it really clear exactly what you wanted when you closed your eyes? It was? I've often, no? Good. You're with me. I close my eyes like, what do I want? I don't, either. It can be disconcerting. It's like, I don't know what I want. And part of spiritual practice is so visceral in a sense that when we become aware of what we want, and we're also aware that Krishna's fulfilling all the desires, that's an equation that's in this verse. Did we find it? 27? 7, 9, 27. In the purport, I don't know if I should show you this purport. It's too startling. You want to be more mellow, right? No, I think you do. I can tell by the way. That was half-hearted. All right, let's read this. But I did warn you, if you don't want to be spiritually stimulated and have a kind of existential crossroads in your life where you start to think about making changes in your life towards loving Krishna more and diving into a nandam buddhivardhanam, an ocean of happiness, then don't listen to this. Okay? Agreed? All right, here we go. Please move down to the English translation and the purport, and here you go. I did warn you. Unlike an ordinary living entity, my Lord, you do not discriminate between friends and enemies, the favorable and the unfavorable, because for you there is no conception of higher and lower. Nonetheless, you offer your benedictions according to the level of one's service, exactly as a desire tree delivers fruits according to one's desires and makes no distinction between the lower and the higher. And here's your purport. In Bhagavad Gita 4:11, the Lord clearly says, Yayata mam prapadyante tamstataiva bhajamyaham. Now when I get to the part where you intuit that this is the sentence that I'm pointing to that is going to change your life, you raise your hand, okay? Yes? As one surrenders to me, I reward him accordingly. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Sorupai Krishnara Nityadas, every living being is an eternal servant of Krishna. According to the service the living entity renders, he automatically receives benedictions from Krishna, who does not make distinctions, thinking here is a person in an intimate relationship with me, and here is a person I dislike. Krishna advises everyone to surrender to him. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. One's relationship with the Supreme Lord is in proportion to that surrender and the service one renders unto the Lord. Thus, throughout the entire world, the higher or lower positions of the living entities are selected by the living entities themselves. Okay, I got a hand up in the back. Ekachakra Pran, was it the last sentence? It is. I'm going to read it again. Can you handle it? Okay, where is it? Got to go up. Bring me back a little bit. There it is. One's relationship with the Supreme Lord is in proportion to that surrender and the service one renders unto the Lord. Thus, throughout the entire world, the higher and lower positions of the living entities are selected by the living entities themselves. Let that marinate for a minute. Can I read it again? Thus, throughout the entire world, the higher or lower positions of the living entities are selected by the living entities themselves. Om Tat Sat. If one is inclined to dictate that the Lord grants something, one receives benedictions according to his desires. If one wants to be elevated to the higher planetary systems, the heavenly planets, he can be promoted to the place he desires, and if one wants to remain a hog or a pig on earth, the Lord fulfills that desire also. Therefore, one's position is determined by one's desires. The Lord is not responsible for the higher or lower grades of our existence. This is further explained quite definitely in Bhagavad Gita 9:25 by the Lord himself. Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pratir vrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyachino pimam. Some people want to be promoted to the heavenly planets, some want to be promoted to Pitriloka, and some want to remain on earth. But if one is interested in returning home back to Godhead, he can be promoted there also. According to the demands of a particular devotee, he receives a result by the grace of the Lord. The Lord does not discriminate, thinking here is a person favorable to me, and here is a person who is not favorable. Rather, he fulfills the desires of everyone. Therefore, the Shastras enjoin akama sarva kamova. You can join in. Let's try it together. Akama sarva kamova moksha kama udadadi divrena bhakti yogena yacheta purusham param. Whether one is without desire, the condition of the devotees, or is desirous of all fruitive results, or as after liberation, one should, with all efforts, try to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead for complete perfection, culminating in Krishna consciousness. According to one's position, whether as a devotee, a karmi, or a jnani, whatever one wants, one can get if one fully engages in the service of the Lord. Now, find somebody next to you that you can talk to and tell him or her one thing that you heard from the purport. I'll give you 2 minutes. Mark, cassette, go. Try to pick somebody you don't know. Okay, we'll take 3. What did the person next to you tell you that you got from the purport? Who wants to start? Yes, Jamuna. Hare Krishna.
Here. Oh.
Sharing means caring.
So Kank and I were talking about sometimes it's better to just defer to Krishna, because what you desire isn't always best. So Krishna knows what's best. So Also, just speaking about sometimes higher, lower living entities, it's like chutes and ladders. Some living entity can feel like they're all the way at the top, and then one wrong move, all the way down again. So you can't really tell. It's just when one is really engaged in Krishna service that you can actually go all the way to the top. It's like the shortcut, just get right there into the higher living entities. That's the best place to be. The rest doesn't really matter.
Okay, let's do a pop quiz based on what you just said. If you score properly on this, you get a 1600 on your SAT. Are you ready? Only a few people ready. Are you ready? Yes. Okay. I'm going to give you multiple choice. Who knows better? A, you. B, Krishna. 1600. You're the smartest people on earth. And this is the main trick to devotional service. Just when you wake up in the morning, just say, who knows better? Me or Krishna? Krishna. And then take Krishna's advice. And there's a way to do that. And the second point you made about chutes and ladders is actually a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam for 10th canto, 2nd chapter, in which the demigods are praying to Lord Krishna within the womb. And they say, Yene rivan nakshava mukta maninas tvayasta bhava davashudha buddhaya aruya krishena paramparam tata patantya to anadrita yushmadangraya. Patanti means to fall back down again. So the demigods praying to Krishna in the womb said, unless people are able to take to devotional service to you, Krishna, then whatever imagined position they've attained within this world, they'll fall back down from it. It won't be stable. So they recommend that one become stabilized by developing love for Krishna. Thank you very much. We learned 2 very good lessons. Okay? Who else would like to share what you learned from your neighbor? Did you know you had a neighbor next to you? You didn't know until you asked. Okay. Krishna Saka. This session is called Sharing Means Caring. We're going to give you a microphone because this is filmed before a live studio audience. And today we have 65 people listening right now on the internet and 10 people on Zoom. Let's say Hare Krishna to Subhadra and everybody on Zoom. Haribol. Radhakripa Prabhu's there. Mekula's there. Dhanavari's there. Adya's there. Hare Krishna, Adya. Who did I miss? Jai Kanai's there. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking to Guru.
Keep that close.
I was talking to Shamalangi Mataji.
Yes.
He liked the same point that throughout the material world, whatever position one is according to their desires. And she was also relating these verses to Queen Kunti Maharani's prayers, which were like 28th and 29th verse, which are related to this verse, Naisha Paravara Matir Bhavatona Nashyaj, where it is also said that Krishna is equal to everyone. If Mataji would like, you can.
Go ahead.
Manne tvam kalamīṣānam anādi nidanam vibhum samam charantam sarvatra bhūtānam yanmitha kali. The next one is Naveda kaścid bhagavans chikirshitam tave hamanasya ninam vidambanam nayasya kaścid daitosti karhichid dveshyascha yasmin vishamamatir ninam. So in both of them, Queen Kunti says that you are equal to everybody. You just do not discriminate. Whatever we feel, that is based on I don't know what word she uses, like social intercourse, like it's our mental thinking. But actually, you do not discriminate. You're not envious to anybody. You're not extra. So you're equal to everyone. So that the theme. So I just thought this one also has you just do not discriminate between higher and lower. So we just found
20 points for the idea and 20 extra points for the shlokas. Haribol. Okay. This is a high-scoring game we're getting here. Well, we got sadhu, and we got more. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Me and Abai were talking about how it said that it's our choice if we want to, become a hog or a
Pig.
go up into the spiritual planetary system. But the question arose that if Krishna is said, he knows the past, present, and the future. So how exactly is it that we have the free will to decide if we're...
They're not mutually exclusive. Just because Krishna's omniscient, it doesn't mean that you can't make a choice. What was your main point, though?
No, yeah, we were talking...
It kind of drew a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a question, so I wanted to ask you.
All right. 2.
Hare Krishna. Vrindaranya, Madhuri Sakhi, and I were talking about the same set of prayers that Shamlagi Mataji just mentioned. And I thought it was really nice that Madhuri remembered them, so kudos to her. And just want to read the translation really quick. It says, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human, and so are misleading, which we thought was an interesting point. And it says, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. And we were reflecting on the idea that Krishna is not partial or impartial, but he's reciprocal. So he awards us according to to our services. And just when we're going around the material world outside of devotees, we may make a distinction between favorable and unfavorable people, but knowing that Krishna doesn't make that distinction was nice. And it was a reminder to treat everyone in that same light.
Very nice insights. Is an interesting nuance to this, that Krishna sees everyone equally, and so do the highest level of devotees, called Uttama Adhikari. There's 3 levels, and of course there are gradations even within those levels. But entry-level devotional service called Kanishta. Above Kanishta comes Madhyam, which means middle, and Uttama means the topmost. There are Kanishta Kanishtas, there's Madhyam Kanishtas, and there's Uttam Kanishtas. What's the rest? There's Kanishta Madhyam. This is on your SAT also. In any case, the Kanishta is described as having a particular perspective. A Kanishta is a devotee, but that level of devotee sees that Krishna is in the temple, but not anywhere else. And then the next level, the Madhyama, sees that Krishna is there and Krishna's devotees are also there and respects the devotees. Then makes 2 more distinctions, that there are people who are innocent and open to hearing about Krishna, and there are people who are inimical towards Krishna. And then the Uttama Adhikari sees that everybody's already a devotee except for him or herself, and thinks everyone's a great devotee but me, and doesn't make distinctions. So it's interesting, at the same time, Krishna doesn't make distinctions. On one level, we also don't make distinctions, and Krishna advises in the Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastani, that a devotee who's learned sees beyond just the superficiality, which is the material body, and sees there's a soul inside. Nonetheless, Prabhupada warns us, don't imitate the Uttamadhikari and pretend that to have no distinction whatsoever when we're on the Madhyama level. Last one.
Hare Krishna. Anushri and I were discussing the statement that the living entities kind of constitute their own position and that Krishna is equal to everyone. And Anushri brought up this interesting analogy about pouring water into many different cups. And the water will go into all the cups unless the cups are sealed. And in that way, they won't receive the water. And so it really helped me kind of understand this idea that Krishna is equal to everyone, but it's up to us whether we want to open our heart to him.
Well, that's a nice point. It reminded me of a saying that people used to use as an insult when I was a kid, and that was said when God was giving out the brains, you only brought a little thimble. You know what a thimble is? It's something, it goes on the end of your finger, so when you sew, you don't. It said, when God was giving out brains, you only brought a little thimble. So you have to be open. And that's one of the points of spiritual practice, is to be ready to receive. So let's try that reception by chanting the Maha Mantra.